Hello everybody, I'm Martin from CV's Parchim in Denmark, and this is the fifth and final video in the IBaC Unveil series. We have a lot to go through, but I want to keep it short and sweet, so let's just get on with it, shall we? In the previous 4 videos in the IBaC Unveil series, you have seen the platform evolve, adding gradually more functionality and improving the user interface. However, the guns also steadily increased in complexity. In this video, I will be showing you this gun. It is the QTS Scout, a smaller, lighter and cheaper version compared to the standard issue, but still retaining all the essential functionality from that gun. I prepared a slide for you where we will go over the advantages that this gun has to offer. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so we are going to do this a little bit differently from normal. I had some challenges with the lighting and decided to move everything to my desk. So you now see in front of you the actual gun, the QTS Scout. We have the design here in the 3D program, and we have the slide that I just want to talk about shortly. So let's dive right into it. QTS Scout, advantages in the arena, in the pit and in the workshop. Arena is of course where you shoot the other guys. The pit is where you spend your time between the rounds and keep your gun going. And the workshop is at home where you fiddle and tweak and make everything just the way you want it. Okay, the arena, first and foremost. This gun is very compact and ultra light. This particular gun weighs about 1200 grams dead weight, meaning that without battery and without optics and without magazine, it's about 1200 grams. The plastics actually only account for about 30% of that weight, so the final weight of the gun depends a lot on the internals inside. I have inside a CNC aluminum box from RetroArms, a Pro Win hop-up, and an SHS high torque motor. The weight distribution of the gun is that most of the weight is around the motor and gearbox, and some of the weight in the drop stock where the battery is. It is extremely easy to lug it around. It's very maneuverable. When you load it up fully, this gun is probably closer to 1500 to 1600 grams, but it's still a very light gun, all things considered. So it's also more compact than the standard issue that you saw in chapter 4, and about 400 grams lighter, something like that. Yes, and moving on. Next up, the gun has the quad trigger system and proven software that you have seen in the other videos. And to just quickly take a look at the screen, we have the 2 trigger banks with each 2 triggers which are opposed to each other. Functionality of the QTS is pretty much what you saw also with the standard issue. Works the same way, putting the gun in safe mode, scout mode, combat mode, and so on. Of course, there are some functionalities that it doesn't have because it doesn't have all the same accessories. And speaking about accessories, we have in the Scout we have an integrated tracer. Now on the other guns from the other videos, the tracer was integrated into the hop-up. I had used the ME Pro with the built-in tracer, but for this gun I have chosen not to use that. Instead, the tracer is now built into the front and located under this service panel right here. And the way you get to the tracer is that you simply loosen a few screws and take off the service panel, and you can see this is the cavity where the tracer electronics are housed, in case you need to change anything or something broke or whatever. It's easy to get to, and you can also see the flashlight modules here. More about those later. So you have integrated tracer in the front, meaning that you are free to choose whichever hop-up you want to use. Next up is the dual asynchronous strobe. This is a standard feature on the IBaC platform. Looks a little bit differently than on the Standard Issue. This is a little bit more tightly packed around the barrel, but you have the two flashlights here. In Scout mode, they will be shining in persistent mode, and in the combat modes, it will be flashing in dual async mode. And if you haven't seen it in previous videos, hang around, because I will do a test shoot at the end of the video where I will show you exactly what dual asynchronous strobe mode is. Yes. Okay, we also have some completely new stuff on this gun. Random pulse fire. When the gun is in combat mode plus, you can shoot bursts with the trigger, but if you hold the trigger down, you instead shoot pulse fire, and that means you shoot a burst, pause, burst, pause, and it's controlled by the gun's controller. I've made a small illustration here in Paint where you can see the difference between normal pulse mode and random pulse fire. Here you see the pulse fire is like burst, pause, so on. In the normal mode, you have a break between the bursts of about 500 milliseconds. I can't remember the exact number. But with the random pulse fire, an element of randomness is added by the controller, and the idea is that if you're having a corner fight with some dude, he can't just sit and count the milliseconds and just pop out in between your burst and shoot you. Now he might get a little surprise. This will be a standard feature in the software going forward, I expect. And you choose between these two modes by simply setting a jumper on the main board, and if you don't have a jumper, it will default to normal pulse mode. I will demonstrate how it works later. Okay, so next up is another standard feature for the IBaC guns. It is the drop stock with integrated battery and controller bay. And like on previous guns, you take out this pin right here, and then you just pull the back of the stock right off. Let me show you on the screen. There we go. Take the back of the stock right off, and then you can have full access to the battery bay and the controller. Very nifty. Finally, the Scout has no unnecessary design bullshit. It is a no-nonsense construction. A lot of the guns on the market, they have a lot of fancy little trinkets and whatnot all over the gun, and it catches on the clothes. It makes the gun unnecessarily heavy. You have to disassemble things, and you know, it adds complexity for no good reason. The Scout is a manifestation of the philosophy of C.V. Spatium. It has really nothing that it doesn't need, apart from a very few aesthetic design features here on the front. It's very streamlined, and it makes it much easier to handle, much more maneuverable, and it saves a little bit on the weight as well. Some people like it and some people don't like it. Personally, I want my tools to just have only what they need and nothing else. So if you feel the same way, you will like this design, I'm sure. The advantages that you get in the pit: the gun has easy battery change, easy spring change, disassembly, and access to the controller / MOSFET. You just seen before on the screen how you simply pull out this pin, and then you can remove the back of the stock, the butt, and you have access to the controller and the battery bay. That's very nifty. But if you want to change the spring, you actually have an advantage over regular M4 guns. And I say regular because this gun is based on the M4 platform. Can't really escape that fact. So if you want to change the spring, you can actually take off the entire back part of the gun and get direct access to the mech box. Let me show you. Remove, remove, remove. Take out this bolt here, and this is where the stock connects to the receiver. You take that out and you can simply slide the stock right off, and then you have access to the mech box here to change the spring. This is an operation that takes somewhere around 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how how dexterous you are, I think it is the word. And in this line of thinking that to keep things simple goes throughout the gun, that when you take it apart, it's made to have as few screws and bolts as possible to make it easy to service the gun. Yes, okay, next up is the workshop. As you have just seen, the gun disassembles into relatively few parts. You don't have a lot of extra stuff that you don't need. You don't have screws that you don't need. You just take out a few screws or pins and then you can disassemble everything. Each part is easy to replace, and actually all the plastic parts on the Scout and also on the Standard Issue were made to be printed at home on your FDM printer. That's for example a Prusa or one of the many knockoffs on the market. Means that something breaks, well, you just print a new part. And actually it's a question that I get a lot. People, they ask me, how sturdy is the gun? What if somebody shoots the gun with a stream of BBs? Does it shatter? And the answer to that question is, it probably does shatter, but who cares? You simply go home and print a new part and put on, or if you are the type who like to be prepared, you just brought a few parts with you. In many cases, if some part of the gun shatters, it will not directly affect the functionality of the gun, but in the few cases that it does, it's fortunately both easy and cheap to replace the parts, so that's nice. Next up, many of the parts are sourceable from cheap sources such as AliExpress or eBay. And by that, of course, I mean the non-proprietary electronics such as the flashlight modules and a lot of the electronics in the tracer module. They are not proprietary. You can find replacement easily out on the interweb. So that's nice. It's built so that you can just unplug things. It will, as far as possible, not be made with solder rings, but with connectors. So servicing parts that are broken, like say if one of the flashlight modules here get hit by a BB, well, it's okay. You just change it. The module itself costs somewhere between $10 and $20, I think, on eBay, so should be easy to source. The gun is built to be customizable, and by that I mean, as you can see, the gun is designed completely in Fusion 360. Fusion is a free program and it's quite easy to use. So if you know how to use it, you can make an account with Autodesk, and with the source files it's possible to easily change the looks of the gun. There are by now quite a few different stocks and receivers and fronts available, but they all share the same mechanical interface, meaning that this part here where they connect, or this part here where they connect receiver to stock, it's all the same holes in the same placements and dimensions, so you can just swap them around as you want. And that also means if you want to make something new from scratch, well, if you just use let's say for the front, this part here, you just use this as a basis. Whatever comes after, it really doesn't matter. It will fit on the receiver anyway. So in that way, it's really meant to be as customizable as possible. It's really a people's gun, this one. The gun is compatible with V2 internals. As I mentioned earlier, I have used a RetroArms V2 aluminum CNC mech box on this gun. It has a ProWin hop-up, standard barrel, long type motor, and an M4 style grip. So this is just basically V2 parts. It's very roomy inside, so it doesn't really matter what kind of hop-up you use. And also, I haven't yet tried any mech boxes that didn't fit inside. And in fact, the roominess is what gives the gun the look that it has. I heard a lot of people complaining that it looks boxy, it looks like a Lego gun and so on, but there is a reason for that. And the reason is that the gun has been made to be future-proof and to be upgradable without too much hassle. You can have a lot of wires and custom electronics going back and forth inside this gun. And in fact, both the Los Muertos, all your guys' favorite gun, and the Standard Issue has a ton of custom electronics in the front. connected by wire all through the gun down to the controller here in the stock, and there's still some room left. So there was an idea with making the gun a little bit boxy to look at. As you can tell by now, I'm not very focused on aesthetics, so I'm more a functionality kind of guy. If you have the same mentality, you will probably like these guns, and if not, then you can whine a little bit about it, or you can redesign it as you want. And that brings me to the final point in the presentation, which is the most interesting to you, I imagine, that the gun is potentially open platform. And what do I mean by the gun being open platform? I already used the expression that it's a people's gun. As you can see, the mechanical parts, they are all designed in Fusion, which is free, Autodesk. And if you have an account with Fusion, then you already a good portion of the way towards also working on the electronic hardware, because the hardware parts that have been custom made for the gun have been designed either in RS Design Spark, which is a free program, or the newer modules have all been made in Autodesk Eagle. We're just so lucky that Autodesk, who makes Fusion, recently purchased Eagle PCB design program, meaning that if you have an account for using Fusion, then you can also get Eagle, and it's actually quite intuitive and easy to use. So if you are into custom electronics, well, that's open platform as well. Finally, the controller is based on Arduino platform, meaning that if you know how to program in C, if you have any experience with Arduino, or if you're just a clever person who can figure out values from variable names, constant names, and so on, it's fairly easy to tweak the firmware or make a completely new firmware if that's what you feel like. So in that sense, the gun is really built to be changed into whatever the user wanted to be. The gun as it looks right now is my take on really what is an completely unapologetic race gun. It's made to be used in tournaments. High speed, low drag, low weight, lots of functionality, easy logistics, easy to maintain and replace parts and so on. But what is your guys' take on this? Let me hear what you think, and hang on, because right after I am done with this really long monologue, I have added some footage of me test shooting the gun. A small disclaimer is that at this time there are still a few minor tweaks that needs to be made, specifically to the firmware, but also to the tracer module. The tracer does work, but I want it to be more powerful. I want the BBs to shine more when they come out of the barrel. So that's something that I will be working on in the near future. But apart from that, the gun is fully functional, and you will see that in just a moment. So thank you for watching.